Hi, and welcome to today's SketchDeck Short, where we're going to talk all about rebrands and brand refreshes. So I'm here with Monique from the SketchDeck team, who's going to tell us a bit about what a brand refresh is and what you can benefit from it. So Monique, what is a brand refresh?
So I think that brand refresh should be talked about in kind of three different ways. So a lot of times when people hear brand refresh, they think full new brand. So what a brand refresh really is, though, is taking your brand and from a spectrum of just looking at how to apply it all the way to a full strategic researched rebrand. There's a whole spectrum there with a visual brand refresh right in the middle. So what a brand refresh is taking your current brand and elevating it to a point of having a lot of the same core principles there, a lot of the same core application there, but adding to it, refining it, and kind of tweaking it to fit a different function or even expand its function a bit.
Thank you. And could you give me a sort of good example use case for a brand refresh?
Yeah, so I'm even thinking of a client that we have who has had a brand. The brand hasn't changed for maybe 7 to 10 years, and we're a partner of theirs, so we follow the brand guidelines. We create the same infographics and one-pagers, and there's a strong partnership there. But after a while, they started to kind of get the content, and even though we were following brand guidelines, it was just like, their feelings like, I just don't love this. And that's something that we have to be aware of, because it's not that maybe your designers or your design partner is not following your brand guidelines, but if it's just feeling stale, if it's just feeling like uninspiring, unappealing, or even worse, it's not actually the truest perception of your company anymore. Maybe it was, and now it's not. That, I think, is a good time to really consider a brand refresh, where you're not, throwing everything out. You're taking something and you're just what the word is, you're refreshing it to again feel like, okay, this is really reflective of our brand and where we're at now and where we're going. But also, I'm inspired by this. I think this is mature and our company is mature, or this is playful and our company is playful. Just to make sure that you're recalibrating a bit and making sure like I said, just like the word says, you're keeping things fresh.
Thank you. So it's kind of like a brand and a company are two kind of living things that both have to sort of change and evolve over time, and you kind of bring them back together.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good way to look at it.
And if you're doing a brand refresh, what are kind of the goals and what are the deliverables in that sort of project?
Yeah, so let's just start by looking at what if we the very like minimal part of a brand refresh, or I don't even know if you'd call it a brand refresh, a look at a brand, a deep dive look at a brand. You would look at how it's applied, and you can even make changes to it. So that's not actually changing any of the visual qualities. So you can improve the application during this stage. So you're going to explore and you're going to clarify what does our brand do and how is it used. Deliverables in this case would be a brand book. So I don't know if it's just because I'm in this field that I love brand books, but there's something really exciting to see. It's almost, I guess I would picture it as like, if it were my own personality, kind of reading through my Enneagram, or reading through like, oh, I'm a ENJ, just kind of reading my personality, but having it all succinct. I think that's how brand books are. It's like, what is the personality of a brand? What are the different elements that build it? And let's put it all in one place. So that's like bare minimum. So that's looking at the application of the brand and creating a deliverable around it. The next one would be a visual brand refresh. So then you're looking at the brand, you're refining the brand, and you're also having a detailed brand book as a deliverable. But you're updating things. So you're updating templates, you're updating different things with the new aspects of the visual brand.
Thank you. And what what sort of organizations would benefit from these different types of brand refresh?
So what type, like what kind of companies?
Yeah, what kind of companies?
So I think that there's really very limited, there's really all companies. Like I think the first one that comes to mind are these small startups, like even SketchDeck. You know, we went through YC, we had, I think I look at our first logo, of course, that
Which I
evolved.
drew and was terrible.
Hey, it served its purpose. But what's interesting about that original logo, which for anyone listening, it was just this finger with kind of like a square around it. It actually evolved. That actually evolved quite a few times in the same look before it was completely scrapped and we did a full rebrand. I think what a good way to look at it is, like, if you're a company and you're growing and you're evolving as a company, then you are a company that would want to consider brand refresh. That is the Coca-Colas and the massive brands. I think they regularly go through brand refreshes. But then I really think it's important for smaller companies who, I mean, we all know, we've been in the startup world a while, that we're pivoting a lot, like what we're offering, who we are as a company, we're pivoting. And so I think your brand needs to reflect those pivots as well. And if you don't, it just kind of feels disjointed in a way.
Can you do a brand refresh where you just change a couple of things, like maybe some colors or illustrations or templates?
Yeah, I think that is the best way to do a brand refresh. Really, I think when people hear brand refresh, and when I talk to a lot of clients, because I'm on the strategy side, so basically my role is to come alongside clients and say, how can we get the most value out of our partnership at SketchDeck, and let's look at your brand and let's look at ways that your brand is used. And when I bring up refresh, I learned early on that I had to really come prepared to tell clients, head of marketing, head of brand, that it's okay, that it's not a scary thing, that it can be a color, we can explore application, we can add a secondary color, we can take everything that's existing, and we cannot lose the legacy of a brand, but we can elevate it. And it doesn't have to be a bulldoze thing that needs this CEO's time, hours and hours of CEO's time. It could be really just a deep dive into what's currently there and making sure that gaps are filled.
Yeah, that sounds really smart, because that way you can fit it into any sort of budget or timeline to get that kind of brand elevation that you need.
Yeah.
Thank you. And how does organization know when it's time to do a brand refresh, or it's a good time for a brand refresh?
Yeah. I think that, so oftentimes I think that brand refreshes are really put on the back burner. And and again, it goes back to that original concept of it being a really scary thing that's going to cost a lot of money and going to need a bunch of buy-in. So from my personal experience, I would say, first of all, they're usually like way overdue. Like, people are like, oh, we've been meaning to do this for the last 3 years. So I would say that one. But two, I think that they're one of those things that usually, unless someone at the company is overseeing the brand, they are the authority on the brand to make that decision, it usually doesn't happen very fast. So a good time to do it would be, like I said, when you're kind of getting all of your collateral and you're looking at it all together and you're saying, I know this is all on brand, but this is not reflective of what I'm trying to communicate or who we are as a company. I think that even if you have that feeling about a couple pieces of collateral, I think it's a good time to start exploring what a brand refresh would look like.
Okay, and if a client kind of knows that it's about time for a brand refresh, and they have an idea of which things they want to change and don't want to change, what kind of price range, what do these different kind of brand refreshes cost?
So I know, like, everybody's terrified to throw out numbers, because like there's all these like what ifs, but what if you're doing a whole new font system? Okay, if we were gonna go just estimate what these numbers could look like. So I would say, if you're just looking at brand application, this is a couple $1,000s. You're having someone look at the way the brand is used. You're putting it together in a brand book. Nobody's creating anything. We're putting it all in one place, and we're saying, here's a rule. This is when you use this kind of logo. This is when you use this kind of logo. I'm going to say a couple $1,000s, 2 to 10. That's a wide range, but you know what I'm saying. Visual brand refresh. So I'm not happy with the core of my brand. I want to redo the logo, the typography. I want to keep the art, certain aspects of our legacy, but I'm going to build on top of it and change some stuff up, actually design some stuff. That is definitely going to be in the 10K to all the way to like 50K range. Of course, again, that's a huge range, but you're considering, what if you leave everything the same, but we're just exploring for a long time what kind of colors are communicating what kind of feelings, and then we add those to the brand. So I'm going to go 10K to 50K. And then the even higher level of brand refresh is a full strategic rebrand, where you bring in an agency and they do research on your target audience, and they do historical research on different ways that this brand can be perceived or communicated. That I think is far more in the 25K to 250K range. And that is actually what people think of when they think of brand refresh, even though I think we need to help clients and marketing teams think of brand refreshes more in that visual brand pillar, just less, it's again, not a bulldozing of the brand. It's not starting over, or it is starting over, but you have a direction and elements to work with already.
Thank you. And if someone watching, wanted to take those first steps into a brand refresh with SketchDeck, what should they do?
So I would say that they would gather everything that they have on their brand. They would definitely have a whiteboard session where they figured out everything they loved about their brand, everything they hated about their brand, everything that they're just indifferent about, and just kind of get all of that in one spot. Because I think a lot of times when we talk to someone for the first time, they feel scattered to be like, but don't change this font because I love this font. But I think it feels overwhelming. But if you have a solid whiteboard session about your brand with your team, by yourself, and you kind of just have that all in one place, I think it's a good place to start. And that's where I think SketchDeck can come in and say, okay, so we see that you really like this part of your brand. Let's maintain this. And we see that this is a part of your brand that really needs elevation. So here's some ideas we have on that. I think that's a good place for a company to start, and a good place for a company like SketchDeck to come alongside that already thought out process.
Thanks, Monique. Well, this is super helpful. Thank you for sharing all this.